Hello everyone and welcome to my first ever Bitcoin and cryptocurrency video. Today we're going to be talking about some of the fundamentals in the space as well as diving into some of the technicals. We're going to remove all emotional opinion and just focus on the facts and the charts. I believe the best way to begin is to talk about what Bitcoin is in the first place. And so we're going to take a look at the Bitcoin white paper here. And Bitcoin is basically a peer-to-peer version of electric cash that allows online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. And this is really important because I believe that much like how the internet revolutionized the way we exchange information, I believe that blockchain technology is going to revolutionize the way that we exchange value. If we take a look here at the traits of money graph, we can see that Bitcoin does well when being compared to other forms of money like gold or fiat currency like the US dollar. Bitcoin is very verifiable because you can't send or receive fake Bitcoin, whereas with gold or fiat, it's possible that when buying or selling goods, you can get scammed because someone gave you fake gold or fake money. When it comes to being portable, Bitcoin, like the US dollar, is very portable because it's electronic money, either stored on like a private wallet or like credit card or debit card, but gold is not so portable because it's really heavy in large amounts. Bitcoin is also very divisible. It can be divided up to 9 decimal places, whereas gold and US dollars aren't always convenient to be divisible, especially in physical form. When it comes to scarcity, Bitcoin takes the cake. Because Bitcoin lives in a digital world, not only do we have a 100% degree of certainty on its supply, but also the incoming supply. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever mined, and the amount of Bitcoin being mined constantly gets halved every 4 years, so there's this deflationary effect on the price. Whereas with gold, we don't exactly know how much gold is really out there. We could one day discover a large amount of gold hidden somewhere, which could dramatically affect the price, or the US dollar is not scarce because it's just constantly inflated. And as a result, we can see how the US dollar just loses purchasing power year after year. Whereas with Bitcoin and with gold, we could see how it appreciates in price. As far as being censorship resistant, Bitcoin is very censorship resistant. No one can prevent you from accessing or spending your Bitcoin. Whereas with fiat, your card can get declined or your bank can prevent you from accessing your funds. Bitcoin is also very decentralized. We not only know it's not owned by any single entity or person, but it's also very transparent. We could see where all the Bitcoins are, as well as all the transactions that take place on the network in real time. However, fiat currency is not decentralized because it's regulated and issued by a government. Now that we have a better understanding of what Bitcoin is, now it's time to understand how and why the markets move the way they do. As for how the markets move, we could take a look at the S-curve of adoption and see how the markets move in phases. And as time goes on, and as the penetration of the target market grows, starting with innovators to early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards, price would follow this kind of path. But to answer why the markets move the way that they do, we could take a look at Wall Street's cheat sheet psychology of a market cycle and see how they label the feelings appearing in the market as the market fluctuates, going through periods of contraction and expansion. And note how the people feel in the market during its peak point of maximum financial risk versus the point of maximum financial opportunity. It's important to understand this because we can see how the price is only based on human emotion, which is fear and greed. And now that we know how and why the markets move, we're going to dive into the Bitcoin chart right now. We're going to take a look at the BLX, which is the longest price action chart that we have for Bitcoin, going all the way back to before 2011 here. And now if we dive into the Bitcoin price action, we can see that Bitcoin has already had 3 market cycles. If we look a little bit closer, we can see Bitcoin's first ever bull market, where it started at a value of just pennies and rallied all the way up to about $30-something before we then had our first ever bear market, where we held this trend line as key resistance for about 200 days. And it wasn't until we broke above this trend line where we then continued on to our second bull market, where we then had our second ever bear market, where we again held this trend line as critical resistance for many, many months, about 600 days. And it wasn't again until we broke above this trend line before we continued on to our third bull market that everyone seems to remember, where we went from just a couple $100s per Bitcoin all the way up to about $20,000 a Bitcoin. And then, fast forward to present day, we had our third ever bear market, where for about 940 something days, all these monthly candles held this trend line as critical resistance. And it wasn't until after this 900-day downtrend was broken that we continue on to our fourth ever bull market, where I believe not only Bitcoin will reach hundreds of thousands of dollars, but in the long term, many, many millions of dollars. And I say that because if we take a look at all the world's money in one visualization, we could see Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies market cap is significantly smaller than every other asset class out there by a long shot. This is a little bit old, so Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are currently valuated about like 600 something billion dollars. But if we can compare that market size to other ones, such as the US budget deficit, where we have like $3.8 trillion of economic output there, or coins and banknotes of money just sitting around other banks, it's like 6.6 trillion, or even like the Fed's balance sheet of 7 trillion. We got global billionaires out there, $8 trillion. How about just the money in gold alone, $10 trillion? Fortune 500 companies, all these trillions of dollars here. Stock markets, 89 trillion. All the money supply, 95 trillion. Global debt, this is a big number. How many is that? 253 trillion, that's insane. And then global real estate, 280 trillion. And then even global wealth, 360 trillion. These numbers are massive compared to crypto. Derivatives market, notional value, 558 trillion, low end estimate. And it's crazy because Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is a new asset class, and I believe it's here to swallow all these asset classes. And what I mean by that is because Bitcoin and blockchain is a new form of money, it's made to move all the money out of these markets and be as liquid as possible. And so that's why in the future, I don't see it being very hard to imagine a Bitcoin being valued at millions of dollars, because there's only so many Bitcoin out there, but there's so much money out there. And we're so early in this adoption cycle. And we've seen what Bitcoin can do in these crazy market cycles in the past where we go on some crazy rallies. It's no wonder why, after breaking this 900-day downtrend line, we're seeing some crazy price appreciation, because this is what Bitcoin does. It has crazy bull markets, and it brings new adoption and new attention to the space. And we could track that stuff in real time, because we could see here on Google Trends data for Bitcoin, we can see how the search results over time has been going up, especially in recent times. By the end of this month, we hit at 86. Back here, we've been hitting like 64, 62, and currently we're at like 100. Printing, probably going to print another high here. It's important to track the trends, because here we could zoom out to like the past 5 years, for example, and we can see the last time Bitcoin was crazy in the search trends results was December 17th, 2017. And if we zoom into the charts to take a look at when that was, look at that, $20,000 Bitcoin. That was the top peak of our bull market cycle. Another fascinating thing to track besides the Bitcoin search trends data on Google is also the crypto fear and greed index. We can see here this oscillator measures Bitcoin's fear and greed, and if we see the last time it bottomed out here was in like March this year. And that's key because this is when we had the most fear in the market. And if we take a look at when that happened in the charts, this is March. This is the day of COVID. So you can see how if you buy when people are fearful, you're making very good choices. You can see here how now we're up in like very greedy territory, especially up here in the extreme greed. And so that's why maybe in the short term, if we zoom in then and just go to a different chart here now, let's just zoom into like maybe a daily time frame, some short-term outlook. When it comes to Bitcoin in the short term, because of the amount of greed in the markets and because of the crazy uptrend that we've been in, we are going to be due for some pullbacks. The price never just goes straight up. If we zoom out a little bit, let's go back to the weekly, for example. Last time Bitcoin broke above all-time high, you can see that the ride up was quite the experience. In fact, on the way up from its previous all-time high of $1,200 all the way up to this $20,000 top here, Bitcoin experienced many drops on the way up. This one was about 35%. This one was about 40%. That's crazy. This one's about 30% again. So it's no easy trip up for sure. And that's why in the short term, if we do experience about a 30% drop, let's say that put us back at about $16,000 per Bitcoin, or if let's say we went down to even like 40%, that'd put us at about our $14,000 level. But in the short term, to watch if that's going to happen, we could zoom in back to like say let's go to the 4-hourly for example here. On the super short term, you can see we were holding this trend line as support here, where we bounced off of it quite a few times, and it wasn't until we broke above it now that it looks a little more bearish. And this is only a 4-hour time frame, so for Bitcoin to be bullish again, we want it to be trading back above this trend line, or at least this price right here of about 23,000, we'll call it 23,500 bucks, where we held major resistance a couple times. We even flipped it as support right here, and now we're holding it and testing it back as resistance again. If we pop back above this level, we could still get rejected. Careful, right around here, the previous trend line that we had as support. So if we get rejected here, I would expect us to roll over and come down to our first trend line of support down here at about like $20,000, something like that. And we can expect that because we have our previous all-time high up here where we had major resistance for many days. We also have our longer term trend line that's been holding us since early October, where we held it as major resistance, flipped it into support, and we can expect to maybe test this in the future at some point. I also have in this other trend line up here where you can see we had major resistance, support, resistance. I really like this zone of confluence for a pullback in the short term. If this doesn't hold, then I would say the likelihood of us testing back down to like $14,000 is quite likely. We can see if we zoom back out here to the daily time frame, then $14,000, that was our previous market cycle high where we held major resistance here. And so yeah, ultimately, even if Bitcoin does come back down to this $14,000 level, I'm sure we'd find support on it pretty quick because we have not only horizontal support right here, but we also have our really long-term support line that dates all the way back to December 18th of 2019 to present day. The only anomaly is that we did break it here for the COVID stuff, but honestly, if the COVID thing never happened, I don't think we would have seen this dramatic of a price sell-off. But nonetheless, you could see it even back tested as resistance on the way up, and now we held it back as support. So in the future, it would be nice to see if this holds as support. This would be a powerful buying opportunity because I don't imagine price lasting too long down here. At last times the Bitcoin price fell down to its price drops, it then just went on to rally like pretty significantly many times. I'll update you guys on future price action in later videos when we go over just basically short-term updates about the price. This was just to be a little longer-term outlook on the market, get people familiar with what's going on in the first place. I appreciate all the love and support on all my social medias. You guys are the reason I started making this video in the first place. If you want my daily updates on this space, just be sure to follow my Instagram. It's going to be the first link in the description below. That's where I post my crypto talk. And I appreciate everybody for watching today. That's going to wrap it up for today's video. I'll catch you guys in the next one.